Hi everybody, welcome to Woman Carrying Man. This is Jake, Nadia, Buddy, and Sedona, and today we are talking about the full first season of House of the Dragon. We talked a little bit about the opening episodes, and we're very favorable about it. Last night we watched the finale, so we're going to talk about the finale, but... Okay, then. But first, we're going to be talking about our general thoughts about the season without spoilers for the book or show. After finishing the first season, we talked about, the so-called competing show, Rings of Power. What do you think won out, so to say? I know it's not a fair comparison, but what do you think was the more successful show after watching them both?
Oh, definitely House of the Dragon.
Okay.
Yeah, I think fans are a lot more satisfied. I think it's because the author also has, he's an executive producer, I believe.
I think also because they're really trying to save their asses from the finale of Game of Thrones. They have a lot to make up for. And I think they were like, we're not making any mistakes on this one. This is going to work out.
I was so disappointed with the last couple of seasons of Game of Thrones. So it better not end that way.
Yeah, like season 8, they're like, okay, rushing through the story, just like leaps in logic. And now, first season of House of the Dragon, they're like, okay, we're going to slow it out, really set everything up for the coming stages. And I really appreciated that. I didn't really know what to expect because I don't know the story and I didn't know what to expect going in. But I felt like I was being led into like a story that was planned, that had purpose, that was like, we're seeing the characters develop and grow. Honestly, the time jumps, because most of the episodes have a time jump where we're getting new actors, we're getting, things happen really fast. That was a really fun way to look at the dynamics of this family. It felt like reading one of those old, epic stories about, multi-generational family, or whatever. How would you rate the first season of House of the Dragon?
Probably close to 9.
Really, yeah.
Yeah. The only thing about House of Dragon that it's just super anxiety inducing to me. I feel like I have nightmares every time I watch it, especially the last few episodes. So the story is awesome and everything, but it's also really brutal and it's hard.
Well, yeah, I think it's funny that you are rating this higher than the Rings of Power show, but I catch you watching and rewatching scenes in Rings of Power, and after we watch an episode of House of the Dragon, you don't even look at it. You don't want to think about it again.
Well, I think that's the difference I just don't see myself rewatching the show because I get a lot of anxiety from watching it. That doesn't mean that it's not a good show. That doesn't mean that it's not binge worthy. That doesn't mean that you can't rewatch it. I just have a hard time making sense of the tragedies, even though it's a storyline. It just bothers me. And then also the incest is really weird, I'm rooting for a niece and uncle. Well, it's what the heck is happening right now?
Well, unlike other stuff. What's great about it and what's also hard to watch occasionally is that there's no clear-cut heroes and villains, and our brain just wants to be we root for these people, we like these people, and it's both sides have done some heinous shit,
I do think that there's clearly heroes and there's clearly villains. Even though we don't have...
It's a gradient.
I think, but I don't think there's perfect hero. I think the Greens, it's not spoiler, I don't think, to know that the Greens are not, they are more villain type. There's a lot of flaws in Alicent and her logic. And I think the way that she operates and her father, Hightower.
But even though, I don't like their side, I don't like the Greens, and I think Alicent is largely in the wrong. However, I can understand completely where they're coming from because they've been put on this slow motion car crash that's inevitable with the way this is set up, where it's going to come down to whose kids are going to survive. And they're both mothers, and Alicent can only think at this point about the survival of her kids. And so can Rhaenyra. So in watching this develop, watching their characters have to face these decisions and figure out how they're going to deal with this, what I love about it is that it shows how a lot of these problems started out small and just got bigger and bigger, largely because of neglect or finding smaller issues. It's a very it's very socially oriented, about the development of these sorts of things. That's not from a character development perspective, even though the characters are really strong. but it's like, this is what happens when these types of people are together and exist in this type of constrained system. I mean, that's what's great about George R. R. Martin's storytelling that everyone talks about, because he does take that fantasy to the next level of, it's like we're watching history occurring. It's like we're reading documents that have happened and you go, wow, that makes sense because this is where the material circumstances of this and this and this. Another thing is that this show really focuses on like women dealing with this cruel misogynist system. There's so much focus on women's pain, especially childbirth. There's so many scenes of really brutal childbirth in this multiple scenes,
It is supposed to be anxiety inducing. It is supposed to be hard to watch. It is supposed to be very ruthless and brutal.
But I think that it goes beyond just being brutal. Like what makes it great isn't that it's just being brutal, because there's a lot of media and stories that just try to be brutal and shove it in your face, and it doesn't work because you have to have the heart, you have to have the feeling for the characters. Like one of my favorite episodes, and I think a lot of people would back me up on this, is episode 8, King Viserys, and we'll get into this in spoilers, but that's just a very kind of slower paced episode, but like it feels so emotionally heavy because you really care about these characters. New things that you don't see in fantasy, bravery on a different level, that's really wonderful to see, and it's not just about, hey, look at how gross, or look how nasty we can
No,
be.
I didn't mean to imply that, but I think that like it's one of the biggest things is just being grounded to, I don't want to say reality, but really history. If this was real, what would it actually be like? And let's not just pretend like what it would be like. What would it actually be like? I think another thing that really works with this show is a time jump.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, and don't mean to go back to, Rings of Power, but the thing is, it was dragging on. That was one of our criticisms, is it just kept dragging on. I think the timeline jump, because this is a prequel, and a lot of people kind of know at least what, from a historian perspective, what would be the ending for Rhaenyra, and it makes it really interesting to see these characters go through life phases instead of focusing on like Rhaenyra's dating this guy now, and this is what it makes it a lot more interesting. It makes it to the point. It doesn't wait until like season 5. Whoever finishes the game with the most political tactic and whoever plays the game correctly,
Well, and I think that like you said, we're seeing only the essential stuff we need to see. Even if it feels slow, even if they're taking the time, they're showing us stuff that's getting us connected to the characters. That's essential and it has payoff.
And it did such an amazing job with that, because it's like, yeah, you're getting like they're going fast enough with the whole time jump. At the same time, they're allowing us to build like relationship with these characters, which I feel like would be really hard to pull off were it not for just such a great creative team. I will say a criticism that I have about the show is it's really hard to watch a lot of the episodes because it's dark.
Right.
It's like, what is happening? And
I think they go overboard with certain scenes at night, that it's just like, it was really hard to watch it unless you have like a certain type of TV or you're watching it in a theater. But another thing is the acting is just fantastic all around.
Damon and Rhaenyra kill it.
They're great. I think Paddy Considine, who plays King Viserys,
yes,
it was amazing. And we're just watching his transformation throughout the show through his age. All the actors who played the younger and the older, like they did a fantastic job with the casting. I mean, clearly there's so much hard work, a lot of money behind the show, but it all comes down to the writing. None of it would work if the writing didn't work. I think that's the issue with Rings of Power. And one thing I want to talk about briefly is that I've seen certain takes about like these shows, like how House of the Dragon is about doom and darkness and how things just inevitably go to despair and there's no hope, etc. Whereas Rings of Power is like more optimistic show about how there's hope. And the thing is, I don't feel like that's a totally, like, I know that Rings of Power is trying to do that, but I feel like House of the Dragon does a better job of giving me more like hope for humans, or just more like, I don't know, because it feels like it's just being very honest about how people are. There are heroes in, why are you smiling?
It's just House of the Dragon gives you hope.
No, because
For
it feels
humans?
because it feels like it's more honest in a lot of ways. That's like, I think there are great things about Rings of Power. I think that there's an earnestness in the original Lord of the Rings that's like there is goodness and hope, and it's wonderful to think about that. Rings of Power, it does feel like it's trying to get that without showing you characters that are really doing these things or living up to the promise, and we're not feeling that connection of it just feels sort of hollow. Whereas I feel like in House of the Dragon, even though it's much darker thematically and there's really it's a dark subject, I feel really we get to see under pressure certain people do heroic things, certain people do evil things, and that there exists a gradient. And when characters can rise to the moment, it really does give you hope. And there's wonderful, it shows that there could be a better way forward. There are things that could have been fixed, that things could have gone better, but they didn't because of material circumstances, because of the way the society's formed, because of the actions of certain characters.
Wouldn't say it gives me hope. I feel like it makes me not want to believe in anyone.
Okay, well,
you have just like a lot of
it doesn't give me a hope overall, but I think that there are heroic things about it in the show, and you get to root for heroes, and you get to root for, and hate the bad guys, but there's also a gradient, there's also a realism there that it's not just the individual actions of people that's leading the story. It's a whole universe of the whole society that's putting pressure on individuals, just like in real life, like we aren't just individual actors living by our free will, doing whatever we want. It's like there's all sorts of forces guiding us, pushing us, making us do the choices that we do. So.
Oh yeah, I think so. Okay, can we get to spoiler? Because I can.
Sure. Yeah, let's get into spoiler. Okay, spoiler section. If you haven't watched the full season, then skip out of here. If you haven't read the book, that's fine. We haven't either. But we're just going to talk about first season spoilers. So.
I really love the way that Rhaenyra is portrayed as a mother.
Mm-hmm.
And even Daemon as a father. It's interesting how they come together to be a great team, except for the last episode where he chokes her. But, besides that,
I mean, he's a bad guy. He's a deeply, deeply bad dude. But I think
I really liked him.
You understand where he comes from, and you have a heart for him because you see what's motivating him. And I feel like a lot of this comes down to Matt Smith. I think that's actor's name. A lot of this comes down to the actor giving this performance so much nuance, like you feel
he makes this character really dynamic.
Yeah, and it's like you feel, even in those moments of evil, you see like he has so much love for his brother and almost regret, all these twisted emotions of like shame, guilt, but also, anger and wanting revenge. And it's you feel like all of this is brewing in there, and there's so much complexity, but it also makes him feel chaotic. You don't know what his next step is going to be.
And you can't really blame him on his anger. I don't. He is right about his brother. I mean, literally the end of the season where we see like Rhaenyra preparing for a civil war, her losing her child, the dragon, it's all really due to her father. And it's not because the prophecy that he spoke to Alicent right before he died and messed everything up. It's because he like knew that Rhaenyra's crown was under risk and everything else. And he was not very active. He was very passive. And, Daemon judged him for that. And he, even like in the first episode, I think he was like, you could have made me your hand, and he chose Hightower, knowing the ambitions that Hightower has had. And it was no surprise like that. Alicent wanted her kids to be kings, and he kind of just wanted them to get along as family, but he wasn't really grounded in reality for a lot of sense. I think his lack of action really caused big rift.
Well, it shows you that being a good ruler or a good king is basically antithetical to being a good person. In this fucked up system, you can't really be a good person if you want to make the right choices.
Well, and yes, and we know what gives me anxiety and makes me sad is that Rhaenyra, really, she was trying to look for another way, in the end, and not trying to get in, go into war, right?
Well, so was Alicent, too.
Yeah, but Rhaenyra pays the price by losing her child.
Yeah.
By trying to just be peaceful. And it's like she's learning almost a lesson she has so much of her dad in her, right? Of trying to do the right thing and everything, but it's like it's costing her, and that's what I mean by saying this is such anxiety inducing show, because almost like you have to be cynical about the way the world works in order for you to accomplish anything, especially as a woman. It's so hard to watch the rest of the season, not because I don't like it, like next season, but because I know in the back of my mind what is inevitably, at least according to Game of Thrones, waiting for Rhaenyra. And I think like my feeling just validates what a good show it is, right? Because I'm really invested. I'm really like affected. It's obviously doing a really good job at penetrating emotions, and it's just a good show. I also want to say it is amazing how Alicent, being the self-righteous woman that she is, has horrible kids. Whereas Rhaenyra, she's judged by her actions, such as like having kids with not her first husband.
But even then you can understand where they're like, I do think that Rhaenyra is a better person, but I also like see Alicent as she was just a pawn of her father ever since she was, like
no, I do empathize with like I do understand that, but what I want to say is the way that they made Alicent about like hate Rhaenyra was really like it was the only part of the show that I felt like was not well done. It was very easy written.
Well, I thought it was well done, but it did make me hate Alicent.
Well, Alicent was just very much like, hey, you're my best friend, I'm there for you. But then she finds out that she slept with someone she wasn't supposed to. No consequences to Alicent.
Oh my God.
Then she literally just turns on Rhaenyra just like that. It's like, really, the years of friendship that you have mounted, you literally lied to Rhaenyra, and then like, and then you are going to be the self-righteous person. And I just want to say that that's why it was so fulfilling when Rhaenyra called her out during the fight scene and called her a self-righteous bitch, because Alicent
when she pulls out the knife, that was an amazing scene. First time, just like everything's falling apart, like the whole eye for an eye thing, like it was insane. And I remember like just being like, wow, like I can't believe they're able to push this drama to this like heightened like melodrama almost, but it feels earned. It doesn't feel like they're just doing some like crazy soap opera. It's like, oh, this is like has been building. Like you see all this anger and resentment brewing, and it just doesn't go away. And what I love about episode 8 is that it does feel like the calm before the storm. It's like the last good thing that Viserys does, for his family before he dies. Like he really tries to bring it together, but at that point, I think it's too late, It's just too late. Unfortunately, like what he should have done, what should have occurred early on, it's like he had ways to fix things early on in the show and unite the kingdom more strongly, but he is kind of just, unfortunately, a good guy. Like he's, in a lot of ways, he's not perfect, obviously, but he's like, he does a lot of noble things and is very true to Rhaenyra and honoring her becoming the queen. And in a way, just because he's unable to play the politics and be the bad guy, is that's leads to the downfall.
Well, in a lot of ways, you have to question him as a father.
Mm-hmm.
Because he promised Rhaenyra, and at first you think he's an amazing father, especially for this time period and everything else. But really, you notice like he stops having Rhaenyra's back in a lot of sense. He's just kind of like, well, unfortunately, and he says that, I think in the second or third episode, he says like to Alicent, he didn't know that he was going to have more kids, and he made Rhaenyra the heir because so it's like he has regrets about his decision about having his daughters back in the beginning. And then, but I think he just more so stays with his decision because he
made a promise.
He made a promise and he wants to honor that, but he doesn't really do anything to keep that or like to really make sure that promise stays and to ensure safety for his daughter. Clearly sees the threat that Alicent is posing on Rhaenyra. I mean, Alicent even cuts Rhaenyra in the wrist.
And Hightower. He brings Hightower back into his
exactly,
kingdom,
knowing what a threat he is to Rhaenyra's reign, and he does all of these things, yet he expects his family to be peaceful. When Rhaenyra has been very honest in the beginning, like about, hey, this guy is going to make sure that I'm not a queen, is your grandson, he's going to take after me, can you please protect him? And he just is like, can we just all get along? And it just kind of seems like stupid and not like, oh, he's an honorable guy. It just kind of seems like he's just done and over it and checked out completely.
Well, it seems
it goes back to my earlier point about Daemon. Even though Daemon has done a lot of crappy things, and he's been a horrible brother, he does have a point when he says, like, you are not a great king. Like, Daemon, I think, would make a better king.
Viserys is good, but he's weak, whereas Daemon is he's strong, but he's a shithead. So I do think in this world, if they could work together, but they can't. And I think Daemon probably would be a more effective king, but would be a tyrant. I think Daemon would be a bit of a tyrant.
Well, of course.
Especially young Daemon. I feel like he gets a little better the older he gets, I
think Rhaenyra kind of calms him down.
Well, I think his first or second wife does, the one who dies by the fire, Like, there's a point in the show when he's, like, done, like he's ready to just be done and go live off their own. And that's kind of what's nice about the show, is that it keeps reminding us that these characters, they have choices to a lot of them. They can, like, some of them, they're stuck. They have to live this path and be a ruler. Viserys, he's stuck. Rhaenyra, she's stuck. But a lot of them, they say, like, we could just go away and live in peace and have our kids. And it's like, you can get out of this political fight. There are outroads, but they are so thirsty for power. They love the political dance.
Yeah, and I think Daemon, like, although he did mellow out a lot, I don't think his ambition of becoming the king and ruling ever went away. I think he just was fine letting Rhaenyra lead as long as he could lead with her. And I think that really shows when Daemon chokes Rhaenyra, because Rhaenyra talks about the prophecy about Aegon becoming king. And if that's true, and, her father never told Daemon that prophecy, so there's a little jealousy there. But at the end of the day, I do think that, yes, young Daemon would have been a bad king because he was really ruthless, and you could tell that first episode how he approached and really hurt people. But I do think that the older Daemon, even if Daemon was still the heir, then I think he would have been fine as an older, because he really knows how to check people. And I think with Rhaenyra by his side, I think they make a really strong, powerful couple if they are given the chance to do so. The problem is that it's taken away from them now. Going to war is very different than just ruling, right? A kingdom that's already...
It's this divided kingdom. It's going to be very different. I mean,
yeah.
And the show really sets it up for season 2. Like it's, now everything's set up now. Everything's ready. We're all set on this journey, this war, and I'm just ready to see it happen. I'm sad we have to wait. I know
what's going to happen.
I have no idea. All right.
I'm done.
All right. Well, thank you for watching. Let us know what you thought of House of the Dragon Season 1, and let us know what other stuff you'd like us to talk about or review. And we'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.